First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity and sitting down with us for this interview. I'm Airman Rivera. I have a couple of questions for both of you.
All right.
So first, you're no stranger to JBER. How have you seen the installation evolve since you both served here?
Want to go first, Chief?
Sure. I arrived at Elmendorf Air Force Base in July of 1998 for the first time. And of course, since then, we've had a lot of mission transformation. There's been many evolutions of what this base is designed to do in the platforms, but what's remained the same is it's in Alaska, which is the greatest place on the planet in my book, and the people. The people are still the same great folks that are always supporting our military, supporting our airmen, and helping us make things happen for the mission.
Yeah, I first started coming here during my assignment from Kadena between 1993 and 1996. There used to be an exercise here called Cope Thunder, which was the predecessor to Red Flag Alaska. And I would just come here TDY, and there were a number of buildings. There still are some buildings that were built in World War II, but there was a lot of buildings back then still built in World War II. We actually stayed, as our billeting, we stayed in those, and it was still fantastic. And like the Chief says, greatest place on the planet is in Alaska, I think. And so we just had a great time training. And what's still the same is it's the best place, at least in our nation, to train. It's the best airspace to train, and it was the same then too. But as time has gone by, the base is modernized, and there's plenty more modernization to take place. But we have the F-22s here. We just built a new building for the E-3s. Of course, we have C-17s. Back then, they had C-130s. So there's been quite a bit of progress, and you'll continue to see that progress, I believe, here at Elmendorf as we go into the future.
So there's been a steady focus on agile combat employment in the recent years. How important is Alaska to ACE, and where do you see JBER fitting in with ACE?
So ACE is important to PACAF, and in fact, it's important to the entire Air Force. With the advent of our adversaries being able to shut down airfields, what we've learned is that if you disperse and you operate from multiple airfields, you create a targeting problem for the adversary. And in order to disperse but continue to apply air power, we have to have the skill set to be able to do agile combat employment. To do that dispersal, meaning that you can command and control that force, that you can launch and recover that force, and that the force will remain viable. And in fact, we create air power effects by dispersing and making it difficult for the adversary to target us. It's important in Alaska because the forces that are in Alaska are going to be used in a high-end fight, especially in the Indo-Pacific theater. And we're going to need them to be able to do ACE. And one of the most important things that every airman can think about is being a multi-capable airman, being an airman that can do more than one thing, because we won't have the luxury of having specialists at every spot that we deploy to.
One of your priorities is lethality. How important is JBER when considering how we project joint forces into and throughout the AOR?
So the base here in Alaska is in one of the most strategically important places in the whole world. Any of our forces can be anywhere on the planet in the Northern Hemisphere within about 8 hours. That gives us a capability that you cannot replicate anywhere else. So when you talk about the power projection platform kind of for the nation, it really is the base that we're on right now here at Elmendorf. So you can't underestimate the importance of the strategic value of Alaska. And then, that's one of the reasons why we have the amount of fifth generation fighters that we have up here. We can get to where we need to be with the threats that we're facing in an amount of time that's viable for the whole force.
Exactly right, Chief. The other thing is we have got to get the most out of our weapon systems. We can anticipate being outnumbered. And if you're outnumbered, then you have to have a kill ratio that makes it viable to win, which means You know, if you're just one, you've got to be able to kill more, and that means being lethal. And so my expectation for Alaska forces is we're training very hard because it's not easy to have a high kill ratio. It's hard, especially when you go against a threat that's as advanced as what we might have to go against. It is difficult training. There are difficult tactical problems, and it's a full team effort. You're not just talking about the pilots that are flying the F-22s out there. It is the entire team from every group in the wing that needs to contribute to this high kill ratio every single day by being innovative, by working hard, and by challenging one another with tough scenarios.
Thank you, sir. Chief, an assignment to Alaska comes with a unique set of challenges. With an increased focus on people, what message do you have for our younger service members and their families here at JBER?
My message to our young folks is, number one, it's not something they probably hadn't heard before, but get out into the community, get out into the environment, be safe about it, but you've got to see what this place has to offer. It's really important to resilience for our folks to get out and spend time with other people and experience what it is that Alaska has to offer. The other thing that I'll share is that we are at Pacific Air Forces very aware of the challenges that our folks face here. And there isn't one of them that is more or less important than the other. And we are doing everything that we can, working with Headquarters Air Force, within our own staff at PACAF, talking to our congressional leaders, and anyone else who will listen in our community about all of the issues that we have, from childcare to mental health care. The list, it's a long list of things that we have that are challenges. Many of these challenges aren't unique just to us as Air Force members. A lot of these are human, condition problems and problems at a lot of places across our whole country. But that doesn't make it doesn't give us the ability to ignore them, right? We are absolutely focused on the well-being of our airmen and their families, and we're going to do everything we can to try to help with all the issues that are going on.
So combined, you both have more than 22 years and 12 assignments serving at Alaska at multiple levels of leadership. What are your thoughts on the uniqueness of Alaska and the role this installation plays in the future?
With challenges come opportunities, and the Chief is exactly right. There are so many things to get out and experience in Alaska, especially if you've never lived here before. There's a full assignment of things that you can do that probably will give you something to think about and something to remember as you go into the future, and maybe if you leave here and you don't have a chance to come back. From the outdoors to people that you can meet, to cultures that you can interact with that maybe you didn't have in the lower 48. And so there's so many opportunities just from living here. Switching gears to the other half of your question, which is how important is Alaska. Billy Mitchell said it in the early 1900s, it's the most strategic place on earth. The Chief just said it again. It's absolutely true. And when you think about our capability to move at 500 plus knots across the earth, we can get anywhere in the northern hemisphere in a few hours. That means we're on the front lines, especially if you start thinking about Russia, North Korea, and China. So that means that what we do here is essentially critical to our national security.
Thank you, sir. What is the driving force behind your leadership?
I think the biggest thing is communication and making sure that your folks understand, what you want them to do. And in many cases, you don't want to tell them how, because airmen are incredibly innovative. And if you give them some left and right limits, and you tell them what you want done and let them figure out the how part of it, they will normally surprise you. And that's been my experience. The other thing is, as a leader, one of the things that I learned when I was a young captain was to be credible, humble, and approachable. So credible in your job, approachable so that people will feel free to come and talk to you about questions that they might have, or if they don't understand your guidance, they can clarify that. And then credible, humble, and approachable. The humble piece of it is putting yourselves in their shoes, and how would you want to be treated if you were in the reverse role. And so I think those are three really key attributes of a modern airman leader that are really valuable.
How about you, sir?
I would say the most important thing in leadership is listening to what your people want, and then trying to figure out a way to get their desires and goals lined up with what the Air Force needs. And that's sometimes not easy to do, right? Because we have some requirements that that cause people to have to make sacrifices that they might not volunteer to make right off the bat if they weren't in a military organization. So really, finding what is going to kind of motivate people, finding what it is that will give them confidence that we are really listening and really want to try to help them and help them get where they want to go. Like the boss just said, if you take the ideas that are coming from the people that are doing the work, and you kind of let them experiment with those ideas and give them the support that they need, they will probably almost every time figure out a better way to do it than what you have thought of yourself, because they're the ones that are closest to the tactical situation. And it's kind of a disease of getting older in the Air Force, is trying to let go of some of that, that kind of control that we have over situations. And based on our experiences, we do know kind of how things might play out based on what we've seen in the past. But our people they're different than us. They're more educated than we were when we were in their positions. And every time we get out of their way, they absolutely blow us away with what they come up with.
Thank you, sir. Going into your third year as a command team, what are your goals for Alaska and PACAF in 2023?
Certainly, we need to be ready to respond to North Korea should they do something that would require us to respond, and of course Russia as well. But the PRC is our pacing adversary, and we can get better against this threat, and we should get better in this threat. In Alaska, as I said before in a previous question, we're nearly on the front lines. We're close enough when you start talking about air power that we will have to respond if we get called to by our national leadership. And so we have to be ready. And my expectation for every airman that comes to Alaska is that we are training with that adversary in mind. And it's the best place in our country to be able to do that. We have the JPARC here, which is a range space that allows us to train at the max level better than any place else we have in our country. We've got a community that supports that training. We've got the Army that is here with us so we can practice joint. It's an incredible place to be able to train and get ready for what we may be called to do. And so that is my focus. That includes agile combat employment. That includes better and a more efficient, multi-capable airmen. Of course, the whole time we're doing that, we take care of airmen and families, because it's the airmen and the families that are going to do all of what I just talked about. And if they're not ready to train, if they're not ready to fight, then we obviously won't accomplish our mission.
So my job as the command chief, working for General Wilsbach and working for all of the airmen across PACAF, is to take his vision and his priorities and then try to put them into action. So to support what the general's speaking of with lethality and training and making sure that we have a force that's ready against the adversaries of today, we've got to have a strong enlisted force. We've got to have an enlisted corps that's ready to go do that. There's all kinds of great things that are happening, and we've got the strongest enlisted force in the world, but there's improvements we can make. So for this year, in this third year, what I'm hoping to happen is to get some momentum going on having more professional military education more frequently for our enlisted force, but in kind of smaller bites. So we're working on some projects in the command that will do some reorganization of how we deliver PME, and then something that we're very excited about. One of the things we also need in that future outlook for our readiness and posture is working with partners. All of our partners across the Pacific are super important. When you line up our friends, it's a very long list. When you look at the friends of maybe some of our adversary countries, it's not such a long list. So we've got to cultivate those relationships. And one of the things we need to do is help them grow an enlisted force that looks more like ours. So we are going to stand up this year an organization called the Inter-Pacific Air Forces Academy that's going to be focused initially, at least, on the growth and development of partner nation enlisted forces across the Pacific, and we're really excited about that.
Thank you, sir. So those are all the questions that I have for both of you. Is there anything else that you both would like to say?
So I want to thank all of the airmen and their families for serving in Alaska. I hope they are enjoying it as much as the two of us have enjoyed serving here. But what I'll tell you is, and you mentioned it earlier, you asked a question about the challenges, and we know there's challenges, not just here in Alaska, but throughout the Pacific, and they're different in various places. But we want to know about those challenges, and some of them we can fix, some of them we have fixed. And so I would encourage everybody that listens and views this short interview to let us know what the challenges are, because we care. We absolutely care, because I said earlier, airmen are the ones that are going to accomplish the mission, and if they are preoccupied with challenges that they can't be 100%, then we're not going to be achieving our objectives the way that I want us to. So tell us about your challenges. We might actually be able to fix them, and some of them we can fix quickly.
I'd like to say thank you to all the units out there across Alaska that we've visited over this last week. It is very clear that the focus on Arctic readiness is there, and that has, over the last couple of years, really become a game-changing kind of a focus level for commanders across our Alaska forces. It's extremely important. The Arctic is a different mindset and a different challenge than doing your job in another location, maybe in the lower 48. And we recognize that that's a need, and that is being moved out on, and we're super excited about it.
Yeah.